a little bit about NWSOFA, and I will share a couple slides with you. So let me share those. So as we're all aware, I hope, NWSOFA stands for the Northwest Suburbs Organizing for Action. It is an indivisible chapter. And NWSOFA has a fairly good-sized reach in the Northwest Burbs. We cover Streamwood Township, Schaumburg, Elk Grove, Wheeling, Palatine, and Barrington. Now, not all townships are the same, but collectively there's over 660,000 voters in these areas. Now, we don't have that many as our membership, but our membership is approximately 5,000 within those areas that we email at least 2 to 3 times every week. NWSOFA is organized into 2 groups. One is an issue team, which is the blues, what we call our snowflake issues. And then on the left side is our communications team, which is growing because of all the demands on having virtual meetings, using Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live, and new weapons that we all have to promote information and help people understand what's going on. Our issue teams, if you take a look at that snowflake and you start at the very top and just to the left, you'll see our Conversation Z, which is a new podcast that we came out with this last year, oriented to the younger voters, getting them involved. And then more traditional to the right, we have our ACA healthcare reform, a team that works consistently on our the Affordable Care Act and any changes to that. Going around is our immigration teams, then our social justice group, which has really been on fire lately, doing a lot of work, not only locally here, but across the state. And then right below that is our women's rights group, who have worked very hard on the ERA and other areas. And then right below that is our fiscal and economics group, who holds a monthly meeting talking about jobs, the debt, how our country is doing, and usually provides an hour of update and then an hour of in-depth, deep dive information of what drives an economy. And then going to the left of that is our people who are working now on electoral candidates, etc. And right above is why we're here tonight, our climate change group, which has really expanded its breadth into various areas that affect our environment, energy, and everything related with that. Right above that is our Restore Our Democracy group, who has been working on filibuster, on gerrymandering, on all areas of getting money out of politics. And then one of our very first groups was our gun violence prevention group, which was started right after Sandy Hook, and is one of our ongoing group. And with all the recent outbreaks of gun violence, that has really been informational. So 9 different groups, all headed by 1 or 2 leads to drive the conversation. We call it our secret sauce. We have 23 volunteer leaders, all volunteer leaders. And you can see that Mark is in that lower right-hand side. He's got the beret on, but a better look at Mark is right here. Mark is our climate change lead. And we'll let Mark introduce our speaker tonight. So thank you for listening about NWSOFA.
So we've invited Sarah Moshkovitz back from Citizens Utility Board to speak to us and give us an update on what CUB is doing. And we know that they're heavily involved with getting CEJA passed, and there are other issues that she wants to talk about tonight. And so without further ado, let's let Sarah take it away. And Sarah, would you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about CUB and take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Thank you all first for inviting me back to speak to your group. I looked up before we got underway, And I first spoke to you all back on October 22nd, 2019, which is actually pretty recent, but seems like a lifetime ago. How different those times were. We met in person at Harper College. So it's always extremely flattering when people invite me back after I've talked at them for a couple of hours. So you're either gluttons for punishment or you liked what I had to say. And I hope not to repeat myself too much. In fact, I like that we have the smaller studio audience right now because maybe I can even mold what I talk about to what is most pressing to you all and your group right now. Because as you might remember from last time, I can talk about utility and energy and clean energy and sustainable power grid issues for hours and hours. But I promise not to because my bedtime is relatively early these days. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and I have a few introductory slides, and then I might jump to some different slides, but let me click share content here, open up my good old PowerPoint, which I know everybody loves. Okay, cool. So hopefully you can see my first slide here, which I made special for you this afternoon, because I know you all had someone from Sierra Club speak about the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which is SB 1718 and HB 804, currently in the Illinois General Assembly. Sierra Club, I think, spoke to you about this last month, so I don't need, I hope, to rehash all that it contains. And I know that this was a major portion of what I spoke to you all back in 2019. We still haven't gotten it passed. So my main point on the topic of CEJA this evening is, have you, if you live in Illinois, contacted your state legislator about CEJA yet? If not, I don't want to hear any excuses. You got to do that. Please do that. If you haven't done that, what are you even doing on this webinar right now? You can go to IllinoisCleanJobs.org. I hope all of you know who your state senator and state rep is, and I hope you know who the governor of Illinois is. But if you don't, you can go into IllinoisCleanJobs.org, enter your address, and put in your message, and it will automatically shunt those messages to who your elected officials are, which I know you know who they are, and you're on first name basis with all of them already. And you've probably already called them dozens of times about CEJA, right? Even if you have, call them again. CEJA cannot wait. We've been waiting for over 2 years to get some clean energy legislation passed here in the state of Illinois, and it's past time for this to get done. We're already suffering from higher rates on our electric bills as a result of the fact that we haven't gotten our act together to fix the capacity market. We've already run out of funding for rooftop solar here in Illinois, you may have noticed. And this is all because of our state's inability to take action to fix these issues. So please contact your legislators. We have just under a week left in session. I have not seen my boss, even virtually, in months. He's been driving back and forth between Springfield and Chicago, where he lives. There's a lot of intense negotiations going on. I believe there are 4 bills currently pending right now, and probably whatever passes, fingers crossed something good passes, will be an amalgam of these bills, but we like ours the best because it is all inclusive and it really takes a holistic view of our energy system, and it also pays close attention to making sure that these improvements are done in a just and equitable way, which really sets it apart from the rest of the bills out there on these topics. So please, I'm going to say this again before I wrap up this evening. IllinoisCleanJobs.org. Please let your legislators know. Maybe you live in a district where you know your legislator is friendly, like, oh, I'm in Mussman's district, I'm good. Let her know too, okay? Nobody is safe, all right? You need to, this is extremely important, and also the governor's office as well needs to hear from us, because they too are trying to get some legislation passed, which has some very promising angles to it, but we want to make sure that some of the important stuff, especially around equity, are not overlooked. So That's it. That's my soapbox for now. Now on to the fun stuff. Just a little background for those who may not. I know you remember every single word that I told you last time I spoke to you all, right? And in fact, you could have just given my presentation, absolutely. But if not, if you weren't there, I will recap what CUB is. The Citizens Utility Board of Illinois, otherwise known as CUB. We were actually created by an act of the Illinois General Assembly back in the early 80s to represent the interests of utility ratepayers. That's residential and small business ratepayers across the state. We're a strange organization because we were created by state statute, but we're not actually a part of state government. We're a completely independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization employing about 26 or 7 people. Over half of those do direct consumer education and outreach and help consumers via our hotline. The phone number is up there. If you ever have any kind of question or complaint about a utility and you live in Illinois, because I've heard that some people too who don't live in Illinois, Illinois is our purview, you can call that number. And if you call during business hours, you'll reach a live human being. She's really nice. Her name's Jan. Jan's still there. And she can direct you one of our consumer rights counselors who can go to bat on your behalf with our contacts at the utility. We also do great education events for utility bill clinics. We used to do them in person. Now we're doing them virtually, although I think we're starting to schedule some more in-person events starting this summer. So we're starting to ease back out there. It's pretty exciting. But if you don't want to wait for that to really get underway, you're always welcome to email or fax even, or mail copies of your utility bills to us, and one of our counselors will give you a call to talk about what we see, because unfortunately we still do see a lot of folks in Illinois overpaying for various utility services. You've still got entities contacting you, trying to get you to switch your energy supply. We still see people signing up for really huge telecom bundles that are loaded with all kinds of junk they don't need. And unfortunately, you know, it's hard to stay on top of what's really possible and what's out there that can help us. And so that's what we're here for. It's free service. It's great. And again, it helps keep us apprised of what's going on out here. What we see in the field is a lot of what keeps us relevant. So please utilize our services if you need them. Hopefully you never do, but we're here for you. And a lot of what we do these days is advocate for affordable and sustainable energy policy here in the state of Illinois. CEJA, for example, which I know you've contacted your legislators about. I also wanted to talk about 2 hot topics, maybe zero in on those, although I hope y'all will weigh in, and if I'm rambling, there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end, but if you feel a severe need to interrupt me, just I can see like a little postage stamp of y'all's faces, so you can go like this or something if you want to get my attention. There are 2 issues I want to talk about specifically today that I think might be of interest to you all, and you may not have already had a speaker present on. And if you have, I apologize, I could skip it. The first one is the issue of building electrification. That's part of a discussion around decarbonization or beneficial electrification. And these are issues that you may have heard bandied about a little bit, and they're about to, I don't know if explode is the right word, but they're about to really become super important here in the state of Illinois, building electrification especially, because my guess is most of you Northwest suburban OFA folks, you probably heat your homes with natural gas. I don't know if you've heard that there are plans afoot to make natural gas obsolete. The idea is to prevent the need to burn fossil fuels in our houses. And as you might imagine, done the wrong way, this could be an insane undertaking that could end up costing lots and lots of money and hurting people who can afford it the least. Done well, it can really move us into a clean energy future. So I want to talk a little bit about this because I am not done talking about CEJA. A larger issue of decarbonization and building electrification is going to be probably a cornerstone of the next piece of energy legislation. What? CEJA isn't it? We're not going to pass CEJA and then we can sit back and relax and we're all done dealing with energy legislation in the state of Illinois forever. No, doesn't work like that. I've worked at CUB for, I'm going to show you my favorite slide. I've worked at CUB for more years than I'd like to admit. And I have seen a parade of energy related bills pass in Springfield, and each one of these has built upon the last. If I were giving this presentation back in 2017, I would be talking about the Future Energy Jobs Act, or confusingly named FEJA, which passed at the end of 2016, which did a lot of things like increased energy efficiency, it enabled community solar, all that good stuff. CEJA is building on that. Once CEJA passes, which it's gonna, in just a couple of days, mark my words, once CEJA passes, we will be then looking towards the next bill, which is going to look pretty carefully at the future of gas utilities in the state of Illinois. And it's going to get ugly. It's going to be a fraught argument. I have been to national conferences where the American Gas Association, I believe, AGA, and the American Petroleum Institute are already getting out in front of this debate, saying that building electrification is going to be really bad and unaffordable. And it's going to hit people who suffer from the largest energy burdens the most. And like I said, done poorly, that is what it would do. But what we don't want to see is this kind of false choice being built up, where you have environmentalists on one side against low-income advocates. CUB strongly believes that there's got to be some kind of solution that works for both of these sides, because on the one hand, we got to decarbonize. On the other hand, we got to attend to the issues of energy burden and unaffordable utility bills. And we can't do this if we just keep doing these ad hominem attacks. And we really need to start thinking about this reasonably and try to forge a way forward. So that's why I'm excited at this opportunity to speak to you all who are engaged in these issues and want to be at the forefront about this topic, because we are just at the very beginning of this debate here in Illinois. Like I said, this isn't really part of CEJA. I'm talking about the bill after CEJA. So I hope that you all will be some of the first champions of this issue and get involved in really sitting at the table and trying to hammer out some solutions that work for folks. Unfortunately, Illinois, I think I saw Mark put something in the chat about California passing something about building decarbonization. And that's the thing. Illinois is very rarely the first to do anything when it comes to energy policy or energy innovation. And in some ways that can be frustrating, but in others, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, because then we're able to learn from other states' mistakes. In my time working in this industry, I have definitely seen some instances where some states have just rolled out some energy policies in ways that were bad, did not work out really well. And so when we put together our policy, maybe a few years later, we were able to kind of do it differently. When it comes to building electrification, when it comes to looking at possibly having to retrofit homes, possibly having to sunset a gas utility, we may not have that luxury in Illinois, and that is because of a looming energy crisis that we see for the city of Chicago in particular. So I know that the audience here is your suburban audience, and you yourselves are probably NICOR customers, but to the extent that you have friends or family in Chicago or are concerned about the plight of folks in Chicago who may be facing really unbearable energy burdens, this is going to be a really hot topic and possibly a big fight. So, and also those of you who are on the email lists or read the news of environmental groups like the Illinois Environmental Council, et cetera, you may have seen some action alerts. You may have seen some news about a little town in the southern suburbs of Chicago called Pembroke, where NICOR is trying to expand natural gas infrastructure. So basically, there are a lot of folks in this town, which is historically an African-American farming community. Most of the residents do not have natural gas service. They have propane. And NICOR is trying to get legislation passed that would basically allow them to socialize the costs of building natural gas infrastructure to serve this community, which as you can see, can become a rather charged argument right off the bat, because we're talking about bringing fossil fuels into people's homes, but it's also about allowing people like the option to get off of propane, which is often much more expensive than natural gas. But the environmentalist argument here is, why are we shelling out all this money to expand natural gas infrastructure when really we should be phasing it out? But then on the other side, you have people saying, well, this will be a good thing for this community. These poor folks are having to deal with just natural gas issues. So that's part of the issue, and that is actually in NICOR territory, and that is a debate that's happening per NICOR, and it's in Springfield right now. It's a lot of it has to do with also kind of trying to attract industry to the area. I believe that some of the elected officials in the area believe that they can lure some big companies in by expanding that natural gas infrastructure. But I don't know enough about the issue to talk a whole bunch about it. But this is something that's already gotten a little bit of news, and it's related to this issue. I'm going to talk now. These slides I actually created to kind of describe what was happening in Chicago right now with People's Gas. And I'm mainly going to show you these slides because I figured out how to use animations in PowerPoint, and I'm really proud of one of these slides. You'll see it's real goofy. Okay, so building decarbonization again, what that means is ensuring that the energy used to power and heat buildings doesn't result in greenhouse gas emissions, really. In most contexts, it means switching from using natural gas, which I've heard that they don't want us to say natural gas anymore. It makes it sound kind of cool, like the kind of thing you'd buy at Whole Foods or something. So we're supposed to call it fossil gas, which I think is better. I've heard it called other things, but fossil gas is the one that I like the most. So I should really go through and change the terminology in these slides. Switch from using fossil gas to propane for cooking and hot water heating and space heating to using electricity to do so. Now, of course, that presumes that you're generating electricity from clean methods. And luckily, we are moving more in that direction. But these are things that kind of should really be happening in parallel, or electricity should be a little bit ahead of the building electrification, which it is. And so why we want to do it? We want to fight climate change. We don't want to be pulling more natural gas out of the ground. We don't want to be burning it in our houses. There have been a lot of recent studies about the detrimental effects that actually burning natural gas in your house can have, not just if your furnace is leaking carbon monoxide, which is an obvious problem, but even just cooking gas. A lot of research showing that cooking gas can exacerbate all kinds of health issues in the home. If you're interested in learning more about that, Sierra Club and Rocky Mountain Institute, RMI, have both published some pretty frightening reports about, for those of us who have natural gas cooking stoves, about what that does to indoor air quality, but also to save money. Really? Well, that's what I want to get here with Chicago. So as I hinted earlier, the gas industry has already gone on the offensive. They say it's unnecessary, it's an expensive transition, it's going to hurt vulnerable communities the most. And I warn you, it's going to get ugly. I've already seen some ugliness at some conferences, and once it hits the mainstream, it's going to be bad. So that's why I want to talk to you guys about this and get ahead of it. So here's the situation in Chicago. This is one of the things that keeps me up at night. The other one is water utilities. This is not a presentation about water utilities, but invite me back. I'd love to talk to you about how anxious I am about water utilities and water privatization and how costly all that stuff's going to be. But back to People's Gas in the city of Chicago. People's Gas, of course, being the gas distribution utility in Chicago. In 2013, our beloved General Assembly passed a law allowing the natural gas utilities to automatically raise our rates through a special surcharge to pay for what they call our safety improvements. People's Gas in Chicago has embarked on a multi-billion-dollar program to replace all of their gas mains. Now, they're just doing it across the board. They're not targeting gas mains that were leaky or anything like that. It's basically an across-the-board giant thing that they can spend kind of an untold amount of money on. Of course, the folks doing the work are really into this because this is guaranteed money for them. It's a very political issue, as you can imagine. But it's been sorely mismanaged and the cost overruns have been out of sight. Of course, the gas utility claimed to legislators that they need to do this for safety. But like I said, they're overhauling their entire system. And of course, some of the system needs to be overhauled. I mean, we don't want things blowing up in the city of Chicago, but there's a prudent way to do this. And we've heard from whistleblowers notifying us that this has not been done particularly well. In fact, there was a state-ordered audit in 2015. 2015. It's 2021 now. We're still in the middle of this. They're still facing the same issue. It's been over 5 years, Like I said, this passed in 2013. The audit uncovered rampant mismanagement, but nobody did anything. They're still able to do this. And since then, the projected price tag for the program has quadrupled and is now standing at around $11 billion just in the city of Chicago. And so who pays for that? Chicago residents do through their bills, $11 billion. So, here's just a picture of a People's Gas bill, and it shows where these charges show up. A lot of the charges are embedded in the monthly customer charge, and then the rest of them show up as a separate line item that we call the QIP, Qualified Infrastructure Plant Charge. That's assessed on your total amount. So the point of this is people are charged this before they even use any gas. So if you live in a tiny home and you're out of town for 2 months, you're still paying over $45 by the time we're done with all the taxes and fees, upwards of $50 before you even burn any gas in your home. And for a lot of folks in Chicago, that is already more money than they can afford. So like I said, yeah, $43.95 in fixed charges before you even use any gas. So in 2018, 15% of the company's over 860,000 customers received a disconnection notice. 15% of their customers received disconnection notices. Think about that. And then it's in September of last year, approximately 30% of People's Gas customers were in arrears. 30% were in arrears because of the financial crisis. Chicagoans are paying about 80% more for gas service than their suburban counterparts. And the People's Gas main replacement program could double our gas bills over the next 20 years if nothing is done to fix it. So it's the situation, the status quo here in Chicago is already too expensive. So, of course, the question is, do we really want to be pouring more money into fossil gas when you have all these issues around health, climate, and affordability, right? So here is where things get really dicey, and here's where my slide animations come in. So if you really nerd out and you start diving into some of these issues, you will start hearing worries about the utility death spiral, and I'm going to describe what that means. So when gas service becomes too expensive, folks who can afford to electrify their homes are going to go ahead and do that. I know people who are pretty well off in Chicago who live in single family homes, not me, I live in a tiny apartment, who have already looked into electrifying their heating system. I think a lot of folks don't realize how much more affordable and how much more effective some of the heat pumps have gotten. There are heat pumps now that are rated to 15 degrees below zero. So that's something that is becoming increasingly feasible even in cold climates like ours. So folks are at some point going to say, enough is enough. I don't need to pay for this. Screw this noise. I'm just going to get rid of the gas utility. I'm going to cut off my gas. I'm going to convert my home to all electric. And so those folks are basically going to leave the rate base. So people's gas won't have them as customers anymore. So then what happens when you have a bunch of folks leave the rate base? So right now you have all of these buildings paying people's gas to maintain the infrastructure, right? If a bunch of them leave people's gas and electrify their homes, that means all of the rest of that money is going to have to be spread out amongst the rest of the remaining customers, who are probably going to be the people who are least likely to be able to afford it. So this is what we've been talking about the looming heating affordability crisis that's getting even worse than it already is. And so, like I said, we don't think this problem is insurmountable, but we need to have some difficult, honest conversations about how we can move forward to make sure that the system that we use to heat our homes is sustainable and healthy and affordable. So, we've only just started this debate in Illinois, but we're obviously going to really need to expand access to energy efficiency programs, ramp up energy efficiency a lot, especially for low and moderate income households, which are traditionally the hardest to reach with this kind of programming, and find ways to overcome the barriers to electrification. So that is my presentation about building decarbonization. I wanted to introduce this topic to you all because you're going to be hearing a lot more about it in the coming months and years. So I don't know if we wanted to take a break and have a little discussion now before I maybe dive in a little bit to maybe a slightly lighter topic of community solar, if anyone has questions. Otherwise, I'd be happy to dive into the community solar stuff because that is something that we get a lot of questions about. So I'll pause for a second and see if anybody wants to talk now, or if you want me to just keep talking myself.
Hey, Sarah, this is Bill. Does the city of Chicago have any plans to kind of prevent the economically disadvantaged to really being dumped on?
You know, that's
in this spiral.
Yeah, that is a very good question. I'm trying to think. I don't. I know that they're aware of this issue. I don't know much about any proposed solutions. What's interesting is that this issue is kind of coming to light at the same time that Commonwealth Edison's franchise agreement with the city of Chicago has come due. It's expiring. And so if you know any of like DSA folks in Chicagoland, there's a growing movement to democratize ComEd. You may have heard about this. And that is a group of Chicagoans who are using this franchise agreement opportunity as a way to perhaps rethink how the electric grid works in the city of Chicago. The city actually, they ordered a study a while back now, maybe, gosh, time is so strange in pandemic times, but I want to say maybe like a year ago, or probably more than a year ago now. Anyway, commissioned a study to look into how much it would cost to actually separate the electric grid serving Chicago from the ComEd distribution system, and really expensive, really kind of a problem. And it's not actually something that CUB would probably recommend simply because of the cost involved. However, there are other things that can be done. You know, the city has a lot of bargaining power with Commonwealth Edison. So, in fact, it was in the news maybe just a couple weeks ago, they just issued an RFI, the city did, which is a request for information from community stakeholders and nonprofits, asking for input on possible things that the city could do when it comes to this franchise agreement, things that the community would like to see come out of this, whether it's setting up a new power nonprofit or municipal power supply company, or whether it's putting together some kind of community renewable system, or whether it's some kind of vast efficiency program, or whether it's forcing this Commonwealth Edison to offer a special low income rate like they do in some other states for folks who are structurally incapable of paying their electric bills. So it's possible. And I mean, like I said, I mean, there's like a great breadth of things that I just listed right there. So it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of this. And so it's possible that some of those solutions may be looking towards this greater issue of trying to electrify people's homes. So all that is to say, I don't know. But there are other things happening in the city that can possibly help move us forward and make a little progress on this front.
Sarah, what does democratize ComEd mean?
That's a good question.
The term you used.
Yeah, you should ask them. It's actually it's a campaign. That's what these folks call their campaign, to democratize ComEd. And I think their idea is to have the city basically not grant Commonwealth Edison a franchise to serve the city's residents, and instead have the city create an electric utility. Don't quote me on that. You should ask somebody from them to give this presentation, because I to talk about that, because I don't actually know. We're friendly with them. We've talked a lot. We've co-presented with a lot of these folks.
Sure.
It's hard for me at CUB to understand how that could work without it being just insanely expensive. But I'm probably mischaracterizing it, and probably if you had one of their great folks on, they would explain better than I would.
One more question. Wouldn't separating Chicago from the rest of the grid end up with a Texas situation?
Yes. Yeah, if you
Not good.
actually completely separated Chicago, then for sure you're at risk of that. I would hope that they're not advocating for a complete separation, because that would be, I don't know how that would work.
Thanks.
Yeah. Ooh, Texas. Yeah, you guys want to talk about Texas? There's not a lot to say. I mean, really, it's just, natural gas bad. But yeah.
Texas cuckoo.
Anything else about building decarbonization? Yeah.
Well, Sarah, I just wondered if Indivisible Chicago is involved in any of that stuff down in the city. I know we have branches down there, but I don't know what they're up to. So it might be.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's very possible. I don't know anybody. I don't think with Indivisible
probably
Chicago.
Reach out to them and find out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They should be monitoring the situation, because it is interesting, and we do have an opportunity here to get something good out of ComEd. Is basically, I think, how we're looking at it.
But I just haven't said that. I just wonder, I mean, if the city of Chicago can't separate from ComEd for what you just said, and the franchise agreement is expiring, then it would seem to me like ComEd has all the cards, right? I mean, you can say you're negotiating, but what do you really have to threaten them with, right? I mean, you have no option on the table other than to accept at the end of the day whatever ComEd gives you. Because as we just said, you can't separate the grid. There's no one else who can come in and supply power whenever this thing expires in whatever, 3 months, 4 months. So at the end of the day, it's a complete monopoly with no leverage.
Well, that is
no
that is a very good point. And on my darkest days, I sound like you. But here's the thing. You may have heard a little bit about the situation with the former Speaker of the Illinois State House, and how some of the previous leaders at Commonwealth Edison were actually indicted for bribery. So all of these things are happening simultaneously. You have the General Assembly is at least pretending to be mad at ComEd. You have the Illinois Commerce Commission, which is legitimately mad at ComEd. They're probably going to undertake some kind of action against ComEd, depending on what legislation passes. Because part of some of the bills that are energy bills that are proposed in Illinois right now does entail paying back ComEd customers who were adversely affected by some of the bills that they passed in recent years. Then you have lawsuits, one of which CUB is involved in, class action lawsuits against ComEd. You have federal case against ComEd right now on racketeering charges. So all of these things are swirling around right now, and ComEd is going to get slapped around a little bit by a variety of different parties. So nobody really knows how this is going to hash out, but we got to try. And ComEd is going to want to, they're going to have to make some concessions. And although they, in a lot of ways, kind of got us where they want us, I mean, we're kind of stuck with them. They can actually get hurt. They can be forced to pay their customers back. They can be forced to get rid of their formula rate making scheme that they passed a while back. So yes, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and so I am pretty cynical, but I've never seen the like of where we're at right now with Commonwealth Edison, and I'm kind of like just eating my popcorn, like looking to see what happens. All right. Well, it's 7:52. Is everybody? How's everybody feeling? You want me to talk a little bit about? Yeah, you want me to keep going? Yeah. All right.
Keep going. Yeah, keep going.
Oh man, you're gonna regret that.
Sarah, I also see this as a short-term problem with ComEd, but that's why you want to say that. Why promote natural gas too? Because that's then you just get roped into continuing with that, and over the long term. So I guess what I'm looking at is down the road, what happens? Electrification is going to be more and more important, more and more established. The grid's going to be improved. Solar farms are going to increase. So what do you see happening?
Boy,
Is that
one other piece? Sure. One other piece we haven't talked about yet is transportation is going to be electrified, and people are going to have electric vehicles, and public fleets and private fleets, Amazon delivery, Ubers, mail trucks, what have you. The CTA pace hopefully will all be electrified. And so then what we have is we basically have big batteries scattered throughout the grid. And if we build the system right, we can actually set it up so that the batteries are charging at the off-peak times, and they can actually be programmed to discharge onto the grid if there's a shortage geographically on the distribution system where they need a little bump. So that's another key piece to all of this. And I really don't know. This is all happening a lot more quickly than I think I was even prepared for. If you had told me, oh gosh, 8 years ago that solar would be as affordable now as it is, assuming that we weren't out of SREC funding from the state, I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't have believed it. This is all happening so soon. If you told me that electric vehicles would be taking off to the extent that they are, I wouldn't have believed it. So we're all moving. This is all moving really quickly, and I want you to keep in mind that it's not like we're going to pass a law and everything's going to be settled forever. It's constantly going to be building on previous progress and tweaking and learning from our mistakes. And if you look at the last 20 years of energy policy in the state and in this country, it's the same thing. I used to think when I first started working at CUB that, it's we're going to pass a great law and we were going to fix everything forever and CUB could go out of business. And I realize now just how naive that was. Unfortunately, and maybe fortunately for my job security, but really unfortunately, I mean, this human endeavor is never going to be finished. We're never going to be perfect. There's always going to be movement. Technology is going to be changing, and what have you. So
as you said, CUB is expanding to other states, which is cool.
Yeah. So for anybody tuning in from out of state, from out of Illinois, like what I'm talking about is very Illinois centered. I've been working in this space in the state of Illinois specifically for 2 decades. But these are issues that all states are grappling with, and we've gotten some funding to seed other cubs in the Midwest. So there's a brand new Cub, Ohio. There's a relatively new Cub, Michigan. There's a Cub, Minnesota. The Cub Wisconsin that's been around for a long time. It's been around for longer than us, but they're a pretty small organization. And then there's Cub Minnesota that just last week, I think, celebrated their 5-year anniversary, which is crazy to think about. So it's a model that's gaining some traction. All right, let's talk about community solar real fast, right? How about that? Because this is now we're going to move to I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about some really tangible stuff that's happening right now that people in Illinois can do if they want to be part of the clean energy economy. So and you can bet I've got slides about it. Hang on a second.
So, and Jim McGrath has solar on his house, some of it. And Mike, do you have solar on yours?
No, I don't.
Nope. And
my community doesn't allow it.
Oh, no.
well, sign up for next AMP.
Yeah, well, see, I live in an apartment and I can't get solar panels on my roof, but here I'm going to go ahead and share these new slides here. So solar panels would be great, and I think it's really sexy. Everybody wants to have solar panels on their home, or they should. But not all of us can. Some of us, we don't own our homes, live in apartments. Maybe we have a lot of nice trees. We don't get enough sun. Maybe your roof can't quite take it. You can't quite afford to replace that roof just yet. You just can't make the financing work. Any other barriers? It used to be that was it. Too bad for you in the state of Illinois. But thanks to FEJA, which passed at the end of 2016, you can now take advantage of community solar. And I know that some of these community solar outfits have been marketing pretty heavily in the Chicagoland area. In fact, a friend of mine, I finally got rid of it. It was here on my desk for a long time. I would show it on my webinars. A friend of mine presented me with a mailer he got from Clearway Community Solar. And he's like, he knows what I do for a living. He's like, look at this scam I just got in the mail. I was like, no, that one actually isn't a scam. I appreciate your skepticism, but that's the problem. When you have these bad actors out there, it really muddies the waters for the good opportunities that are out there. So that's why Cub is here, to help you sort through the good opportunities and the bad ones. So community solar is a legit good opportunity for consumers in Illinois right now. It is thanks to legislation that passed at the end of 2016. You can now, if you're like me and you live in an apartment, you can subscribe to a portion of a community solar garden somewhere in ComEd's territory. And then you get credited on your ComEd bill for your portion of the electricity that is generated. And just in the past couple of months, we've started seeing finally some of these community solar developments actually get connected to the ComEd grid, get energized, and we're actually starting to see the energy flow and the dollars flow. So this is a little infographic that we made about this. You may have gotten some stuff in the mail or in your email or on social media about this. I want to make clear, you're not going to make your ComEd bill go away with community solar unless you sign up for one of the community solar companies that actually takes over your ComEd bill. That's one of the things you want to find out when you sign up with community solar. Some of them will basically ask you to sign over your ComEd account credentials to them, and then they bill you directly. The other companies, and that makes me a little tense. I've just been working at Cub for too long. It makes me a little nervous, although I haven't gotten complaints about it yet. The other companies basically will bill you simultaneously as ComEd. So you will get a bill from ComEd. So this is our infographic we made about this, and we're still trying to make this digestible. It's really hard, but basically without community solar, you're paying ComEd only. With community solar, you get a bill from ComEd, but it's reduced by the number of kilowatt hours that your community solar panels produced. You then get a bill from the community solar company of your choice for those same kilowatt hours, but at a discount. So you are paying for the energy you use, but it's cheaper, basically, with community solar. And in doing this, you are actually supporting the development of a solar farm somewhere here in northern Illinois. And I make that geographic distinction because for many years now, there have been alternative electric suppliers traveling around trying to get people to switch their electric supply. I know you've had these people come to your door, call you up, send you stuff in the mail. I get one from a company called, oh my gosh, Clean Choice Energy. Clean Choice Energy. They send me these big envelopes in the mail, gosh, like twice a month. They have been doing it for years. They really want me. I'm not going to sign up with them because they cost more than if just staying with ComEd, and they cost more than signing up with Community Solar. And there isn't very good oversight over those companies. We don't know if they're actually supporting the construction of new renewable energy. We don't know where it is. I have saved some really absurd web chats with some of their sales reps where they're making up counties in Illinois, like, oh yeah, our solar panels are we've got wind farms like in, you know, Lincoln County, Illinois. Well, there's no Lincoln County, Illinois. I've heard that one before. I've fallen for that one before. Never again. So the community solar option is a much more immediate and tangible way to support the construction of renewable generation here in the state of Illinois. And so if you're like me and you can't install solar panels on your roof, but you want to support it here in ComEd territory, it's the way to go. Now, there are a lot now of solar, community solar companies out there trying to get your business. In fact, there's one, I think it's Clearway. Clearway is offering people a pretty big credit to start out. I actually tried to sign up for Clearway, but my usage is too small. They didn't want me as a customer. So Hub actually has put together a web page on our site that if you can get to by typing in SolarlnTheCommunity.com. And on that, we list all of the community solar offers that we're familiar with, and we compare them for you. And we've done our due diligence. If you have more questions, you're welcome to call us. Call us during business hours. You get a live human being. My colleagues Kate and Cynthia are attending to the solar questions specifically. But this is the web page. We have these tabs just about how it works. Then you can click on what the deals are. Solar for All program. If that is a program where there's an even steeper discount for people who are income qualified. And so here's just a picture of, like, for example, a chart that we have on there kind of outlining the different offers, their contract term, whether there's cancellation fees, whether they do a credit check, whether they require auto pay, or whether you can just pay them as you see fit, and then what their promised savings is. This isn't the whole list. This is just I just took a snippet of it to show you some of the things that we want to pay attention to. So I know one of you before we got started mentioned that you'd signed up with Nexamp. I think Nexamp is on here. Yeah, so 20%, no cancellation fee, 15 years. I don't see a problem with it. Really, these are legit offers. Like I said, Clearway didn't want me because my usage is too low. So I'm going to have to go to one of these other guys. I just found out last week from them about that. So, and then just really quick, FEJA also instituted basically a low-income solar program to increase access to these kinds of programs for people who've historically not been able to take advantage of them. So community solar, residential solar, no money down, really good savings for folks who are income qualified. The income qualifications differ geographically. You have to be below 80% of the area median income. And you can go to IllinoisSolarForAll.com, or sorry, IllinoisSFA.com to find out more information about those offerings. So if you or anyone you know may be income qualified, then you should check this out first. And then if you don't qualify for this, you should look into the standard community solar offerings out there. So that's pretty much, I think, Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say about community solar. Cub has a lot of information about this. We have a YouTube page where we explain how these programs work. It's kind of hard. We do our best. And then, unlike a lot of organizations out there, we do pick up our phone if you call during business hours, and we will do our best to get answers for you if you have any questions. How y'all doing?
I'm good. So just Sarah, just to add a couple of things in here. Peter Gore has been on with us before, and he's the solar expert.
Yes.
He's generating so much electricity now. He's sending his comments,
Yes.
paying him, but he has solar on his house, and he also signed up with Nexamp, and didn't feel that. So you can do both, and we don't feel that there's any downside with what they were offering. There didn't seem to be any problem with it, so you can do it pretty much anywhere. And,
Yeah. Community solar is
working.
one of those things. Yeah, it's one of those things that seems too good to be true, but it actually is true. So folks should do it, and because it's probably not going to stay this great. The reason why they can offer us such a good savings is because the state incentive is really high. So we don't know if it's going to stay that high. So these are the kinds of things that folks should jump on. And that actually is another point that I usually make in these presentations is just because a program exists now does not mean it's going to exist forever. Programs come and programs are taken away. For example, the refrigerator recycling program from ComEd. Used to be if you had a second fridge, like in your basement or your garage, and it still worked, it was plugged in, it was from the 70s, and all it ever had in it was an old 6-pack sitting in there. Well, you could call ComEd, they would haul it away, recycle it, and not only was that free, they would actually credit your bill $50 to do it. Poof, no more. That program is gone. The direct install program through the gas and electric companies in conjunction. They used to give you a smart power strip for free, not free anymore. Boom. So folks who didn't take advantage of that program early on can't get the free power strip. They can get a power strip, they just have to pay for it now. So if you live in Indiana used to have fantastic energy efficiency programs, and then their legislative body just decided, poof, we don't like this anymore. That's not what we're about in India. So we're just going to get rid of these programs. Now, Illinois, I don't think we're going to get rid of them. We're trying to make them better, but still, just a warning, these programs don't necessarily last forever. So if you're thinking about it, you probably don't want to delay. All right. So that's enough soapbox for me. CEJA, please, for the environment, for affordability, for equity, for my and my colleagues' mental health, can we please just get a bill passed? If for no other reason, just I worry about my boss especially, and our lobbyists especially. I talked about the things that I really wanted to talk about. I don't know if you all have other questions about some of the stuff happening in Illinois on energy policy. Yeah.
I got a question for you. In previous presentations, you have showed us charts about the cost of electricity during non-peak hours of the day, and almost going down to zero and sometimes, if I remember those charts right. So I've had a question. More and more I get flyers about not only solar, but the Tesla and the other big battery packs for your homes. So here's the question. Can you buy a battery pack for your home and install it and charge that battery pack off of ComEd at their low rates at night and then feed that back through your system during the day?
Yep. Now the battery packs are really expensive. Like last I checked, they can easily, like people usually talk about buying battery packs in conjunction with a rooftop solar system. A lot of folks want to get off the grid completely, but you know, a battery pack can cost tens of thousands of dollars, and even then it doesn't last terribly long. So that's an expensive proposition, but yeah. And so when I mentioned, I think in to answer one of Mark's questions about kind of the future of the energy system, I mentioned electric vehicles, and then, you know, electric vehicle isn't just a thing with wheels that carries you around. It's also a battery in your house. And, you know, if any of you watching right now or later has an electric vehicle and you live in a state where you can get on real-time pricing, or ComEd calls it hourly pricing, you should do that, because you're going to be plugging that sucker in overnight when the prices are very low, much lower than the 6 point something cents a kilowatt hour we're paying across the board just on the default ComEd rate. You should be plugging that sucker in overnight. And then you're basically, like my boss likes to say, because he has an EV, damn him, lucky guy. You know, it's like free driving. So that's actually one of the no-brainers for people. So the chart, oh, I can show you that chart again. I know where it is, but basically it just shows how for most of the year, the actual market rate for electricity is lower than the average rate that we're all defaulted to by ComEd, right? So if you have big ticket items that you can put off till after hours, like an electric vehicle, it's a no-brainer for you. You should really be on hourly pricing and charging that sucker overnight, and you're going to save a ton of money.
So the new promotion on the Ford 150 pickup truck is that you can actually power your house out of the 150 if you have a power outage. So I don't know how that would work, but
yeah, I don't either. I saw that. I'm like, oh, I wonder how long.
Yeah, very temporary.
Yeah, I think it was like you can have like a light bulb, you know, for a few hours. So.
and a toaster for a few minutes.
Yeah. That toast is real important, man.
But isn't that exciting? I mean, the one thing that you said just a little while ago was how fast we have evolved and we have adopted clean energy, solar, electricity, and it's kind of mind-boggling as to what we were all saying, how long it was going to take, and now here we are. So, you know, it's an exciting time.
And there's so much to unpack. You know, it's really, I'm always excited for these opportunities to get in front of folks who are interested in these topics and have a really in-depth conversation, because there's so much to know. There's so much to unpack. I don't know it all by any means, always learning more. But these are issues and questions that are being debated right now. And all too often, again, I've been doing this so long, I become disheartened by, you know, in my darker moments, it's people's apathy, but also, you know, people are busy. People have lots of other stuff to worry about. We don't have the time to really fully inform ourselves on all of the intricacies of these issues, which are quite intricate. But the extent to which we can at least kind of introduce some of these concepts so that people get it when they're asked to weigh in on it, that's what I hope to get to do through these discussions.
So Bill, just to throw a little cold water on it, I mean, I agree with you. There's been a lot of progress. But on the other hand, yearly emissions of greenhouse gases have continued to go up.
Yeah. Yes.
But Sarah, just a quick question. You know, I've tried to. I'm a big proponent that the only way we're going to really make rational progress on decarbonizing is through federal policy rather than state policy. And I've always tried to look under the hood of CEJA. Quite honestly, it's been very difficult. There's always been a lot of material about what it's going to do and stuff, but not necessarily on how it's going to do or what it's going to cost. So recently, I've seen a lot of publications come out by the Clean Jobs Coalition or whatever, where they explain the changes in rate increases and the RPS charge and all these things that add up. So again, I'm for folks here on the call, they know me to be a big pro-environment guy, a big pro-climate change guy. But is there a risk that following through on a CEJA-like thing, here's my doomsday scenario, is that you put in something that has very lofty, very meaningful, very good goals, but at the end of the day, it raises electrical prices, it sucks up public money to the point where you see a couple high-profile companies move over state line, over to Indiana, where maybe they're not doing this thing. And then it just reinforces in people's minds, yep, we can't afford to do climate change. All those doomsayers were right. It costs too much. Indiana got it right. We got it wrong because we lost company 1, 2, and 3. So at the end of the day, are there any real hard estimates of how electrical rates will change? And will we be, and again, I'm big pro climate change, but will we be at a competitive disadvantage to other states because of how we, maybe we'll have fewer emissions, and that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, we need to bring the public with us. And if the public don't see it as an entirely win-win, you're going to lose them.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I understand. I understand these concerns, and I am not really equipped to talk about kind of the impact on large businesses. That's not really a piece that my organization, much less me, I really focuses on. But I will say, I think a lot of the talk about companies moving away and stuff, I think that can really be overstated. I think that Illinois does have a lot going for it, and I think part of what we're trying to encourage is more jobs through this legislation, because there's going to be vast need for people to actually build the stuff. And it's not just building solar panels, which is pretty easy to do. It's one and done. I think the big piece that often gets overlooked in a lot of these debates is the energy efficiency piece, because that is something that the potential for energy efficiency is immense, and it is labor intensive, and there are a lot of existing buildings in Illinois that need to be improved. So I can't talk too much about kind of like the buildings moving over state and what have you. I think that those pieces are a lot of what is being really actively debated right now. One of the pieces of CEJA that the legislation is trying to correct for a kind of a last minute change to FEJA that basically exempted large commercial and industrial customers from having to pay into the efficiency portfolio standard. CEJA is trying to do that. I think there are some big business interests who are trying to argue that CEJA shouldn't do that. Now, whether the inclusion of that would actually result in businesses moving away, I mean, I kind of doubt that just this one thing would itself result in businesses moving away, but I haven't actually seen any studies of that in particular. But again, getting back to my earlier point of energy policy never being finished, I think that's something that we need to keep in mind as well. We had really high hopes for FEJA. A lot of them panned out. Many of them didn't. The bill itself was really good, but when it came down to implementing it, some things weren't gotten right. And so those are things that CEJA is hoping to address, many of them at least. So, and that is another point that I'm glad you kind of mentioned this, because, the passage of the bill is just the closure of one of the chapters in this saga. Then, I think before we started actually recording this presentation, I think we were talking about how you guys were talking about how you were looking forward to maybe like a nice 4 months of relaxation after the last presidential election. It hasn't really panned out that way. It turns out there's still plenty to do. Well, that's the case when energy legislation passes, so we get it passed, governor signs it. Then you have these agencies that are in charge of making sure that this stuff actually happens. And what do these agencies do? Well, they set up workshops where different stakeholders are invited to weigh in, and you have to submit comments, and then there's more comments, and then they put together a renewable resources plan for the state. And so then like all of these industry folks get involved in all of that. So it's A lot of, I think, what your question is getting at has to do with some of these details that the legislation itself, although at the end of the day, it will be blamed or not for the stuff, a lot of the stuff also gets decided in these kind of even more esoteric processes that are initiated after the actual legislation passes. So all of that is to say, the extent to which you're interested in those details, we are starving for people other than just the usual suspects to participate in these processes. You know, oh man, the Illinois Power Agency is holding a stakeholder session where people can weigh in on consumer protections that apply to community solar companies. Well, you know, who ends up there? Us and a bunch of solar companies, some of them real big and out of state. You know, and so that's why you need organizations like CUB and Sierra Club and ELPC and all those guys to weigh in and participate in these things. But a lot of times there are actually opportunities for regular folks or groups like yours to weigh in. And again, the extent to which you have the bandwidth to help hammer out some of those details, you're welcome.
Yeah, one thing in regard to passing CEJA is that data that, so I'm part of an NWSOFA group called Restore Our Democracy, and one of the things that we include in there is different laws that states pass, and when it gets to a critical point, the federal government passes it. So it shows that passing laws at the state level, which we can do much easier than at the federal level, actually can result in a federal law being implemented. So once you get to a critical mass of states, all of a sudden the federal government goes, oh crap, maybe we should do the same thing. And you get people on board. We show all kinds of examples, you know, like same-sex marriage, you know, voting rights, you name it. We've got all those different examples that states started implementing years ago, and then all of a sudden the federal government implements a law. But so my question is, since there's only 3 days left in this legislative session, where does CEJA stand?
I think everything that I've heard, people who are historically very Eeyore-ish about all of this stuff are actually daring to sound an optimistic note. I am not in the middle of these negotiations by any means, but I am hearing that there's progress, there's momentum, and I think there's just been at this point so much blood, sweat, and tears put into this that that all of the parties, even the ones we disagree with, want to see something cross the finish line. It's not going to contain everything that we want. That is not going to happen. But the folks I've been talking to have, like I said, been sounding optimistic that something is going to end up passing that we can feel comfortable with.
Both houses?
All the way. That's what they're saying, man. Like I said, I don't want to sound too optimistic because you should still contact your legislators and you should still contact the governor. Please contact the governor's office. This has been going on for years. We've been trying to get this passed, and this is really, if it doesn't pass this week, I think a lot of folks are going to be surprised.
And Sarah, I just have to say, after your last presentation, I ordered one of the energy audits, and they came out, and I got 2 power strips. I got a new shower head. I got a new thermostat. I think they found 30 or so light bulbs. I mean, I got a chandelier that's got 15 of the little lights on. You never use it. They replaced every one of those. I was so happy.
Hooray! I love it.
Yeah, that was great. So that really, what I learned from you and had monumental effects. So that was really, really good.
Super. I am very glad that you took action.
Yes.
Do they still have the audits?
They do. They do actually. Hmm.
So Sarah,
Yeah.
do you use your chandelier more now?
Sorry? Sorry, what did you say?
I asked Sarah, no, yeah, Sarah Horn,
Oh.
if she uses her chandelier more.
Well, no, we only eat at the kitchen table. We haven't had anybody in to use the dining room table, so it's never used. But hey, we got good light bulbs in it, all right? They'll last for probably 50 years. And it was weird. It was like
Since
lights
Sarah-
in your closet you don't think about. I mean, that guy went everywhere in the crawl space. It was really, he had a whole box of all my old light bulbs and took them with him. That was
Excellent.
cool.